Good day, this is Dr. Vasil Chaika with you, and today we will talk about blood pressure. We will discuss why blood pressure rises, what protective and negative effects it has on our body, and what to do in order to lower your blood pressure. Watch this video until the end, and you will learn some very easy and simple methods that will allow you to normalize your blood pressure in just a few minutes. So let's first figure out what blood pressure is. Blood pressure is a certain way our body, in this case the cardiovascular system, increases the flow of nutrients to the muscles. For example, when you are running to catch a trolley bus or a tram. Or for instance, when you are arguing with your opponent. Or when, for example, you are attacking or defending yourself. In other words, to enhance the performance of your muscular system, you need more nutrients. And the body has a very simple way. It raises blood pressure. So remember one very simple thing. An increase in blood pressure does not mean that you are ill, but rather that for some reason, though you may not yet know why, you suddenly need a lot of nutrients at that moment. Here's a very simple example for you. For instance, a person is sitting at home reading something, and then the phone rings. And they say, you need to urgently come to work because, for example, there's an inspection, the tax authorities are coming, and for instance, this person is an accountant. And so, while they're hurrying, in order to get to work during this whole period, her blood pressure will be elevated. So, does that mean she has arterial hypertension? No. Another example. Right now, during the war, this is very relevant. For instance, a soldier is lying in a trench, his blood pressure is normal, but when his commander tells him, in 2 minutes, you're going on the attack, after hearing this, his blood pressure will also rise. So what? Does that mean he developed arterial hypertension? No. Blood pressure always exists, has existed, and will exist. It is that protective element of our body that helps increase the flow of nutrients directly to the muscles. That's why you should never be afraid of blood pressure. And just so you know, our system, the cardiovascular system, is designed for blood pressure with an upper limit of 300 millimeters of mercury. But you've probably heard that a blood pressure above 160/100, for example, is dangerous for life. You'll get the answer to this question a little later. Now let's talk about when blood pressure can actually be dangerous. Of course, when blood pressure rises, a person tries to lower it. And in fact, the only method offered to us today from the perspective that blood pressure is a problem, after all, we've always been told that high blood pressure is bad, but now you already know that blood pressure is actually good, is to lower it with pills. And it is actually the medication, not the blood pressure, that is the problem. It is specifically the medications that a person takes on a regular basis that are the real problem, causing all those side effects. And problems with unstable plaques, which can later develop and break off, for example. And problems with the liver, problems with blood vessels, and so on. So the problem isn't the blood pressure itself, but rather the medications that the person is taking. So how should we lower blood pressure then? And what can be done to prevent the blood pressure from rising? Let's go over this once again now. I am convinced that only a comprehensive approach to a person's health, when we take into account physical changes, that is, when we create them on the physical level, at the level of behavior, and in working with emotions, gives a person the opportunity to be healthy in today's world. So as we've already discussed, blood pressure acts as a form of protection. And this protection is activated by the body. This happens when we find ourselves in difficult situations where, as I repeat, we need to either fight against something, resist something, or protect ourselves from something. In other words, when we need to do some work, or for example, save our own life. It doesn't matter. And for this, the body specifically activates the sympathetic nervous system. That is, it is the activation of the sympathetic nervous system that leads to an increase in blood pressure. This is very important. It's not that the blood pressure rises and then a problem occurs. Rather, a person encounters a certain situation, and in order to resolve it, the sympathetic nervous system is activated, and then the blood pressure rises as one of the body's tools. Some additional points for you to know. Activation of the sympathetic nervous system also manifests as cold extremities, decreased appetite, and poor sleep, or what is often called stress. This is also an activation of the sympathetic nervous system. That's why all the methods that exist today, the correct physiological ones, should not fight stress by suppressing it, but rather should reduce the activity of the sympathetic nervous system. And so the first and simplest way is when a person identifies the event that has occurred and understands, realizes, and accepts that this event is over. and that this reaction is no longer needed. Yes, this is a very effective method that allows blood pressure to never rise again, but in practice, often this is difficult for people because they can't let go of the event. For example, she continues to meet with this manager. She can't change her attitude toward her life, toward her husband, and toward the problems that arise in life. So the blood pressure remains elevated. So what else can we do additionally? How else can we reduce the activity of the sympathetic nervous system? And for this, we can use a very simple method. When the sympathetic nervous system is activated, remember I told you about this, the delivery of oxygen directly to the muscles of our body increases so that we have the strength to fight. Therefore, when we lower the amount of nutrients, in this case oxygen in the blood, the activity of the sympathetic nervous system will decrease, because there will be a signal that it turns out there is no need to fight. And for this we will use a simple method. We can take a paper bag or a plastic bag, take a breath in and then close it. In this way, making sure both our mouth and nose are closed. Like this, let me show you, and then exhale, just like that. Breathe calmly into this bag, whether it's paper or plastic. It doesn't matter. What will this lead to? It will lead to a decrease in the amount of oxygen in the air you breathe. The amount of carbon dioxide will start to increase. And it is precisely this that will gradually reduce the activity of the sympathetic nervous system. And as the activity decreases, as the activity of the sympathetic nervous system decreases, blood pressure will also go down. So in fact, with this very simple and basic method that doesn't require any complicated techniques, searching for medicine or rushing anywhere, you can, no matter where you are, whether you're fishing, at home, on vacation or traveling somewhere, you can do what? Lower your high blood pressure. We can also use another method, which is so-called abdominal breathing. This method can also be used. This method also leads to the following. It reduces the activity of the sympathetic nervous system. How do you do it? It's very simple. You need to place one hand on your chest and the other on your abdomen. Your task is to inhale in such a way that only your lower hand rises, while the upper hand does not move. Yes, of course, at first it may be difficult for people to do this because, for example, some are used to breathing with their chest. How? This method can be used very simply. You need to lie down and place, for example, a mobile phone or a small container of water on your abdomen and put your hand on your chest. And you need to try to lift that phone or object with your abdomen as you breathe. In this way, you can also perform an exercise called diaphragmatic breathing. This will also lead to a decrease in the activity of the sympathetic nervous system. And your blood pressure will, of course, what? Go down. There are also other methods that can help. For example, warm baths, which we can use for our feet, or simply sitting waist deep in a warm or hot bath. This also reduces the activity of the sympathetic nervous system. For example, measured physical activity. It's simply walking. You don't need to run, remember, because when you run, the need for nutrients increases, so your blood pressure will rise. You just need to walk at a very comfortable pace without rushing, so that you feel comfortable. And this will also lead to your blood pressure going down. So, by using these simple methods, you will be able to control your blood pressure. But you should also know that with these methods, you can only lower it. If you do not eliminate the main cause of its occurrence, that is, your reaction to events, in other words, actually working with your emotions, then unfortunately, when you find yourself in certain situations, your blood pressure will rise again. But now you already know what you need to look for. You need to find that event. I will now explain this to you with an example. A woman experiences high blood pressure, for instance, when it starts to rain. And she says, "Why is this happening to me?" It's a reaction to the weather. Apparently, this problem has become weather sensitive already. What should I do? How can I get out of this state? And for the past 10 years, she has been taking various medications to lower her blood pressure, but it still keeps rising. Because medications do not solve the problem. They just try to partially relieve the symptom. When we looked into it, it turned out that 10 years ago, right when it was raining. In other words, the conditions under which your blood pressure rises provide the answer to what happened and when. Exactly 10 years ago, when it was raining, her grandson came to visit her. The first one, just a little baby. And they put him in a crib in the main hall. For children, for grandchildren, only the best. So it's raining at night, and this grandmother can't sleep. Something is keeping her awake. Why is her grandson lying there all alone? Yes, I'll bring him closer to me. and she takes him from the hall to her bedroom. And literally 10 minutes later, the ceiling in the hall collapses. The ceiling collapsed because the 5th floor got soaked and just caved in. And so the grandmother was in shock. But what if her grandson had been there? So an unexpected negative situation occurred. And the brain remembered it. Rain, be ready, because in the past, when it rained, something bad happened. If it rains again, something might happen again. And she wasn't aware of it. But when she realized it, when we worked through it, her blood pressure stopped rising. Why? Because her sympathetic nervous system was no longer being activated. So by using such a simple and comprehensive approach, where you can relieve the symptoms and uncover the cause, you can forever forget about high blood pressure. This was Dr. Vasilcheka with you. Only a thinking person can be healthy in today's world.